My husband told me his sister was moving in after her divorce. He then suggested I temporarily move into a rundown rental unit. I calmly agreed. The next morning, he called, asking why I was so cruel. I replied with just one sentence, and he was left speechless. My sister-in-law, fresh from a divorce, arrived with her bags to stay. My husband casually told me to move out to a stifling, tin-roofed rental apartment to make room for his family in my upscale condo. I nodded, seemingly happy to agree. But the very next morning, one sentence from me left my husband utterly speechless. It was the opening move of a masterful counterattack that would leave his entire treacherous family utterly disgraced and financially ruined. What truly happened? Please, dear viewers, listen to my story now. My name is Emily, and I'm 32 years old. I work as a marketing communications director for a major consumer corporation in the city. I grew up in a respectable family. Both my parents are retired teachers who always taught me the value of independence and hard work. That's why, even during my college years, I worked tirelessly, saving every single dollar. By the time I was 28, I proudly held the deed in my hand, a testament to my ownership of a 2-bedroom luxury condominium located in a prime city district. It represented my sweat, my tears, and the best years of my youth. When I was 29, I married David. David was an ordinary office worker from a small town a few states over. On our wedding day, his family claimed they were struggling financially, pouring all their savings into renovating an ancestral family home, so they couldn't provide a single dime for a dowry or wedding expenses. My parents, valuing sentiment over material wealth, saw David as kind and attentive to me, so they happily supported our union. After we married, David naturally moved into my apartment. I never once kept score about whose home it was. I simply believed that once a couple marries, they face hardships together, and his money and my money were all meant to build our shared home. But I was wrong, a mistake whose cost would be the complete collapse of my trust. The turning point began one Friday afternoon, at the start of the month. I had just finished a draining meeting at work when David called. He informed me that Ashley, his younger sister from his hometown, had finalized her divorce and was taking a bus to the city. David said Ashley was in a state of emotional shock and needed a change of scenery to heal her broken heart, so he told her to come straight to our place to stay for a while. Hearing this, I felt a slight pang of discomfort. My husband had made such a significant decision without even discussing it with me. But then I thought of my sister-in-law, heartbroken by her marital breakdown, and my resolve softened. I nodded in agreement. I rushed to the supermarket, buying plenty of delicious food and fresh fruit to welcome my unfortunate sister-in-law. However, my empathy was met with a cold splash of reality the moment I stepped through the door. As the solid oak door swung open, my eyes were assaulted by an unprecedented scene of chaos. Ashley's luggage and clothes were strewn haphazardly in the middle of the living room. Her muddy high heels lay scattered on the expensive sheepskin rug I had meticulously ordered from overseas. Walking into the bathroom, I was utterly aghast. My vanity table had been ransacked. The jar of high-end French face cream, which I cherished and used sparingly, taking out only a pea-sized amount each time, now had a large chunk scooped out of it. My makeup brushes and lipsticks were tossed carelessly on the damp countertop. The peak of my endurance came when I looked down at the bathroom floor. My premium silk bath towel, a birthday gift from my best friend, lay crumpled on the tiles, stained with black mud. Ashley had used it to wipe her dirty feet after taking off her shoes. I walked back into the living room, trying to maintain my composure. Ashley was sprawled across the living room sofa, eating grapes and watching TV, spitting grape skins carelessly onto the glass coffee table. Seeing me, she made no move to sit up or greet me properly. She merely glanced my way and muttered curtly, "Oh, you're home, sis. I'm so tired from traveling. I borrowed some of your stuff to wash my face. Your cosmetics are okay, but a bit greasy, not really suited for my skin. Next time, buy something lighter, okay?" I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the anger rising in my throat. I replied gently but firmly, "Ashley, I truly sympathize with your troubles, but this is David's and my home. You need to ask me before using anything in the house, especially personal items. The towel on the floor is silk, and I value it greatly. Using it to wipe your feet like that has ruined it." Ashley pouted, her attitude utterly brazen. "Oh, please, it's just a stupid towel. Why make such a fuss? I'm heartbroken from my divorce. David said I should come here, and my sister-in-law would take care of me and make up for it. Are you really going to quibble over a foot towel with your husband's sister? Aren't you afraid of what people will say?" Just then, David emerged from the bedroom. Instead of correcting his sister's disrespectful behavior, he turned and frowned at me. "Enough, Emily. She's going through a psychological crisis. As a sister-in-law, can't you be a little more accommodating? It's just a towel. Throw it away and buy a new one. Why are you being so petty and making such a scene in the house?" My heart felt like it was being squeezed. Ashley's feigned victimhood and David's unreasonable indulgence showed me a terrifying dark side to this family. I remained silent, saying nothing more, and turned to walk into the kitchen. I knew the battle to protect my dignity and my property had only just begun. I entered the kitchen, rolled up my sleeves, and began preparing dinner. Despite the resentment churning inside me, I told myself to uphold the duties of a good sister-in-law. I didn't want a few initial incidents to disrupt family harmony. With the ingredients I'd bought at the supermarket, I decided to cook a traditional, wholesome but light meal. Easy to digest, I boiled a platter of thinly sliced pork belly, made a bowl of fresh crab soup with golden roe, accompanied by a plate of crispy fried tofu and a bowl of sweet and sour pickled eggplant. These were dishes David always enjoyed, and I thought they would suit someone from out of town. With dinner neatly arranged on the table, I untied my apron, set out the bowls and chopsticks, and gently called my husband and sister-in-law to eat. Ashley sluggishly walked from the sofa to the dining table. She plopped into a chair, picked up her chopsticks, and poked at the boiled pork before casting a bored glance at the crab soup. Suddenly, Ashley threw her chopsticks down on the glass table with a sharp clatter. "Sister-in-law, are you feeding pigs? Why is this food so bland? I just went through a major psychological shock. I've lost several pounds. I'm looking so pale, and you're serving me a meal of only vegetables and boiled fatty pork? My friends here eat lobster and king crab all the time. At the very least, there should be a grilled American steak. You're a director making thousands of dollars a month. Yet, you're so stingy with your husband's sister." I froze. Ashley's words pierced my self-respect like needles. After a full day of hard work at the office, I came home to clean up the mess she'd made, then toiled in the kitchen. What I received in return was blatant humiliation. I straightened my back, looking Ashley directly in the eye, my voice clear and deliberate. "Ashley, I cooked this meal with all my heart to welcome you. The fresh pork and local crab I bought at the supermarket were not cheap. If you feel this food is for pigs, then please, go to a high-end restaurant and order your lobster yourself. In my home, we only have simple meals like this. I may be a director and earn good money, but that money is my sweat and tears, not free fruit on the street to satisfy unreasonable demands." Upon hearing my words, Ashley immediately erupted into a wailing fit. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably, tears and snot smearing her face, her volume steadily increasing. "Oh, David, look at your wife bullying me. I just got divorced. I'm in so much pain. I just want to die. I came here to rely on my brother, only to be scolded and humiliated by my sister-in-law. She looks down on our family for being poor. She thinks I'm a freeloader. I can't live like this anymore. Just let me be." David, seeing his sister crying, instantly panicked. He glared at me, his face red with anger. "Emily, you've gone too far. Ashley is depressed. Don't you know how sensitive someone is after a divorce? How can you, as a sister-in-law, speak so harshly? Tomorrow, go to the market and buy her seafood and good beef to nourish her. Now, apologize to Ashley immediately so we can have some peace in the house." I looked at the man I had slept beside, feeling so distant that a chill ran down my spine. He didn't care about his wife's hard work. He couldn't distinguish right from wrong. He only blindly defended his disrespectful sister in an utterly baseless way. I slowly stood up, shedding the last vestiges of my humility. "David, I will not apologize when I've done nothing wrong. I cooked this meal. If you can eat it, eat it. If not, then starve. I am your wife, not your family's maid." If you're so worried about your sister's nutrition, then tomorrow, take your own salary and go buy her lobster yourself. With that, I turned my back and walked straight into the bedroom, locking the door securely behind me. Outside, Ashley's prolonged wailing mingled with David's comforting whispers. I sat on the bed, looking around the room I had decorated myself, a bitter sorrow welling up inside me. The marriage I had worked so hard to build turned out to be so fragile and cheap, but I was not a weak woman to be trampled upon. My patience had its limits, and the Miller family had officially crossed that line. That night, I couldn't fall asleep. My sister-in-law's impudence and David's irrationality kept swirling in my mind. Around 11 o'clock, there was a hesitant knock on the door. David entered the room, his demeanor completely changed from his earlier aggression. He tiptoed to the edge of the bed, reaching out to rub my shoulder, but I coldly evaded his touch. David cleared his throat, forced a strained smile, his voice unusually sweet. "Honey, are you still mad at me? I was too short-tempered earlier. Please forgive me. Honestly, I'm in a difficult position. She just got divorced. Her emotional state is unstable, and she's easily agitated. As her brother and sister-in-law, we should be a little more understanding. What's the harm in that?" I remained still, staring straight at the wall in front of me. I knew David too well. Whenever he adopted this sweet-talking, cajoling tone, there was undoubtedly some request or calculation behind it. I spoke coldly. "If you have something to say, just say it directly. Stop beating around the bush. I'm exhausted. I still have a pile of documents to deal with at work tomorrow." David hesitated for a moment, wringing his hands nervously. Finally, he spoke, his words soft, yet like invisible razor-sharp knives, cutting through the last remnants of our marital affection. "It's like this, honey. Mom and Dad back home heard about Ashley's divorce and felt so sorry for their daughter, they cried their eyes out. They said they're taking the bus to the city the day after tomorrow to comfort Ashley through this difficult time. But you see, our apartment, though nice, only has 2 bedrooms. Ashley is depressed and needs a perfectly quiet room to rest, and Mom and Dad need a proper room to sleep in." He paused, secretly watching my expression, then continued at a faster pace, as if afraid I would interrupt. "I already looked. There are some tin-roofed rental units for students in a small alley near your office. They're really cheap, only about $100 a month. I thought maybe you could manage to move there temporarily for a few months, until Ashley's mental state stabilizes and Mom and Dad go back home, then you can move back. It would also be convenient for your commute to work, and you'd be giving up the comfortable space for the whole family to be together. You're understanding and generous. You'll surely sympathize with our family situation right now, won't you, honey?" The air in the bedroom suddenly became terrifyingly still. Only the ticking of the clock echoed. I sat motionless, feeling as if the blood in my veins had frozen. I had thought he was trying to apologize for the evening's events. I never imagined he was plotting to kick his wife out of her own home to make space for his family. This apartment was mine. I bought it, I paid for it, and it was registered solely in my name. Since we married, I had never made him worry about household expenses. Yet now, when his family needed a place to stay, he calmly demanded that I, the homeowner, pack up and move to a squalid, tin-roofed rental in the scorching summer heat to yield my comfortable home to his parents and sister. Such a heartless, utterly brazen arrangement was beyond imagination. Who did they think I was? A fool to be exploited and drained. From the lack of a wedding dowry, to his sister's arrogant attitude, and now his malicious desire to seize my living space. All these things strung together painted a true and cruel picture of the Miller family's bottomless greed. I didn't shed a single tear. Not because I was so strong I couldn't feel pain, but because the pain had transformed into a cold, clear-headed resolve. At this moment, crying or arguing would only further diminish my self-worth. I needed to teach this man and his family a unforgettable lesson about self-respect. I turned to face David, a calm, strangely serene smile slowly curving my lips. Seeing my smile, David seemed slightly confused, but then came a sigh of relief. He thought everything was smoothly resolved. "You're right," I said, my voice so soft and gentle that even I was surprised. "It's only right for parents from out of town to come care for their daughter. Ashley is also going through a psychological crisis and needs a quiet space. This home has 2 bedrooms, so one for mom and dad and one for Ashley makes perfect sense. It would be a terrible sin to make elderly parents sleep in the living room. David's eyes lit up. He quickly grabbed my hand, his voice filled with fake gratitude. "Oh, honey, I knew you'd understand. You really are the most filial and generous daughter-in-law. Don't worry, you just move out temporarily for a few months. I'll cover all the rental costs. When my family goes back home, I'll bring you back and compensate you handsomely." I nodded, pulling my hand away from his sweaty grasp. "All right, go to sleep. Tomorrow morning, you can take me to see the rental. If it works out, I'll move my things right away so mom and dad have a place to rest tomorrow afternoon." The next morning, I woke up very early. While David and Ashley were still sleeping soundly, I moved quietly around the room, carefully opening the safe. I pulled out my jewelry box, which included the wedding gold my parents had given me, all the bank cards in my name, and most importantly, the deed to this condo. I meticulously wrapped all these essential assets in waterproof bags and tucked them deep inside the innermost compartment of the large handbag I always carried. Next, I gathered a few work outfits and basic personal items into a small suitcase. Every action was silent, precise, and decisive. Around 8 o'clock, David woke up. Seeing my packed suitcase, he looked very pleased. He urged me to eat a quick breakfast, then took me on his motorcycle to the rental area he had scouted. The bike stopped before a deep, damp alley in a suburban area, far from the city center. Stepping through the dilapidated gate, my eyes were met with a row of single-story rental rooms with old cement roofs. The pungent smell of sewage mingled with the musty odor of peeling walls. The room David intended to rent for me was barely 100 square feet, with no air conditioning, only a sluggish ceiling fan that spun with an irritating creak. In the early summer heat, which was starting to intensify, entering the room was like stepping into a haydryer. The landlady, a grumpy old woman, demanded 3 months' rent up front. David cheerfully pulled out his wallet and paid. His face beaming. Finished, he turned to me, his voice hurried. "The room is a bit small, but the security is good, honey. Please bear with it. I have to go back to the bus station now to pick up mom and dad. They called and said they're almost here. You can clean up and arrange your things yourself. I'll stop by to see you after work this afternoon." With that, David, utterly unconcerned about how dirty the room was, drove off, disappearing down the alley, leaving me stranded in the squalid rental. He was eager to pick up his parents, preparing to enjoy a comfortable family life in my luxurious condo, completely devoid of any remorse about abandoning his lawful wife in such a wretched place. I watched his back disappear into the alley, a smile forming on my lips again, but this time it was a sneering, utterly contemptuous smile. I looked around the rental room one last time, then decisively turned on my heel, pulling my suitcase, and walked out to the main road. The script the Miller family had written was perfect, but unfortunately, they had chosen the wrong actress. My masterstroke was only just beginning. On the main road, I hailed a taxi. Instead of going to work as usual, I asked the driver to take me directly to the district's power company, which managed the electricity grid for my condo building. At the service counter, I pulled out my original deed and my ID card. I placed the documents neatly in front of the teller, my face showing clear urgency and seriousness. "Hello, I am the owner of apartment 12 of 5. Last night, there was an electrical short circuit in the hidden wiring within my walls, accompanied by a very dangerous burning smell. I fear there's a high risk of fire or explosion which could affect the entire floor. I have an urgent business trip and won't be home to call an electrician. As the homeowner, I request that the power company immediately send someone to seal my meter and completely cut off electricity to my apartment to ensure absolute safety. Please process this immediately." Seeing my resolute attitude and the fire safety concerns I raised, the power company employee immediately checked the information. Confirming that I was indeed the sole legal owner, they quickly printed out the request for power disconnection. I signed my name with a flourish, an indescribable sense of satisfaction rising within me. That wasn't all. Leaving the power company, I went straight to the clean water utility company. With the same story, I reported that the concealed pipes in my apartment wall had burst, and water was leaking and seeping into the ceiling of the apartment below. If the main valve wasn't shut off immediately, it would cause severe damage. Naturally, as the legal owner on all official documents, my request to turn off the water was executed within 30 minutes. All procedures to cut off the apartment's basic utilities were complete. I checked my watch, 11 o'clock in the morning. By now, my in-laws must be comfortably settled in the cool living room, warmly greeting their precious daughter. Let them enjoy that brief peace. I took a taxi to a high-end area downtown. The car stopped in front of the lobby of one of the capital's most luxurious five-star hotels. Doormen opened the doors with polite bows. The reception staff greeted me with professional smiles and respectful deference. I used my credit card to book a deluxe suite for 1 week. Stepping into the spacious hotel room, filled with natural light from windows overlooking the bustling city, I breathed a sigh of relief. I collapsed onto the plush bed, covered in crisp white sheets. The faint scent of lemongrass essential oil eased the stress of the past 2 days. I picked up the room phone and ordered a gourmet steak, a glass of red wine, and a bowl of shark fin soup to indulge myself. Sitting in the comfortable armchair, sipping wine, I checked the weather app on my phone. Today, the city was experiencing a peak summer heat wave. The outdoor temperature was nearly 104 degrees Fahrenheit. The urban heat island effect made the air even more oppressive and sweltering. I smiled faintly, gazing toward the distant horizon where my condo building stood. A high-rise apartment, concrete walls absorbing heat, sealed off on all sides by glass windows. In this scorching heat, without fans, without air conditioning, and especially without a single drop of water for bathing or flushing toilets, that comfortable apartment would quickly transform into a veritable inferno. My ungrateful in-laws wanted to steal my nest, kick me out of my home to enjoy it. Well, I would let them taste the truth, to see how long those selfish, heartless people could endure in that sweltering, stinking nest. The real show was just beginning. I would slowly savor this lavish feast, allowing them to feel the blow and realize that living without decency naturally brings devastating consequences. It was midday in June, and the city sky seemed to melt under the blazing sun reflecting off the asphalt. The outdoor temperature was predicted to be nearly 104 degrees, but the suffocating heat radiating from the massive concrete blocks made it feel like standing in an oven. From the cool glass window of my five-star hotel room, I leisurely sipped fragrant lotus tea, watching the hurried traffic below. At this moment, my heart held not a trace of regret, only a strange serenity. I was intelligent enough to envision the catastrophe unfolding in my luxury condo right now. My apartment was on the 12th floor, facing southwest. On summer afternoons, the sunlight beamed directly through the balcony's glass doors. Normally, the double-layered thermal curtains and 2 high-capacity air conditioners running at full power were just barely enough to keep the interior cool. But today, the entire electrical system had been completely disconnected. According to David's earlier boasts, by midday, Robert and Carol, his parents, would arrive at the regional bus station. Coming from their rural hometown, the two would undoubtedly be burdened with all sorts of provisions, from pork, chickens, and ducks to vegetables and herbs, meant to nourish their precious daughter, who was suffering from emotional trauma. They would be eagerly anticipating a spacious, cool apartment to rest in after their long, bumpy journey. However, the reality awaiting them was a nightmare. When the oak door opened, what greeted the Miller family was not a pleasant draft of air conditioning, but a blast of suffocating, sweltering heat directly to their faces. No fan, no electricity, the house sealed tight, it had become a glass cage trapping the heat. Ashley, already accustomed to complaining, must have been wailing since morning when she woke to find her phone dead with nowhere to charge it. Even more horrifying was the issue of water. Ashley had already created a mess yesterday, and David, in his rush to pick up his parents, hadn't bothered to clean up this morning. The toilets, after multiple uses with not a drop of water to flush, would quickly reek. The stench from the drains and household waste, combined with the stifling heat, created a thick, nauseating atmosphere. The meat and fish brought from the countryside, with no refrigerator to preserve them, would quickly spoil, attracting swarms of flies. I could picture David's red, sweaty face as he frantically tried to fix the circuit breaker, only to fail. Carol would be sitting on the scorching floor, fanning herself with a conical hat, endlessly complaining and cursing the modern but decrepit condo. Robert would be irritably pacing, scolding his son for not making proper arrangements and subjecting his parents to such suffering. Four selfish people, now locked together in a sweltering inferno in the heart of the city. Unable to bathe, unable to cook, unable to use the toilet. They wanted to steal my living space. Well, I would let them fully enjoy that space in its most primal and brutal form. The evening passed slowly and peacefully. I ordered a hot abalone soup from room service, leisurely ate my meal, and then soaked in a bath filled with rose petals. Since marrying David, this was the first time I truly felt pampered, completely unburdened by the weight of being a wife and daughter-in-law who constantly had to defer to her husband's family. The clock struck exactly 11:30 p.m. As I was applying a face mask and listening to soothing classical music, the phone on the nightstand vibrated furiously. David's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring until the third call, before slowly swiping to answer. I didn't speak first, just waited in silence. Immediately, I heard heavy breathing from the other end. Shouting mingled with Ashley's crying. David's voice, hoarse, angry, and utterly desperate, boomed. "Emily, where are you? What the hell did you do to this house? Why has there been no electricity or water all day?" I called building security to check, and they said the homeowner presented the deed and requested the services be cut off. Are you crazy? My parents are almost dying from the heat here. Ashley is crying hysterically because she can't stand the stench. Call the power company and get the utilities turned back on immediately. Hearing those bitter words, I felt no anger. On the contrary, I burst into laughter. My laughter was gentle, but in the quiet of the night, it carried immense destructive power. I spoke in an even tone, enunciating every word clearly. "David, have you forgotten? This morning you yourself told me to move to a tin-roofed rental unit to make way for your family to be together in the comfortable apartment. The house is registered solely in my name. I am the legal owner. I felt the electricity and water systems posed a safety risk, so I cut them off because I wanted to. Why would I need to report to a mere squatter like you?" On the other end, David was stunned for a few seconds. He hadn't expected me to show my hand so quickly and so brazenly. He began to soften his tone, using moral arguments to pressure me. "Emily, as husband and wife, we can discuss things calmly. If you're angry with me, then yell at me. But Mom and Dad are old and frail, coming from out of town. How can you, as their daughter-in-law, bear to let them suffer in this heat? Don't be so cruel. Turn the electricity and water back on, and tomorrow I'll bring you back. No more rental units." I smirked, my eyes turning cold. David's hypocrisy sickened me. Don't use your parents' names to make things difficult for me. When you kicked your wife out to that cramped, dirty, dilapidated rental, did you even think of me as a human being? If you truly pity your frail parents and recently divorced sister, then right now, take out your own money, call a taxi, and take your entire family to a 5-star hotel to sleep comfortably. Those who come begging for shelter must accept their circumstances. Don't play the spoiled child with the homeowner. Goodbye. With that sharp final statement, I decisively pressed the end call button. Immediately, I added David's number and all of his family's numbers to my blocked list. I tossed my phone aside, pulled the blanket up to my chest, and drifted into the deepest, most peaceful sleep I'd had in 3 years, ignoring the greedy individuals floundering in the mess they had created for themselves. The next morning, I woke up feeling incredibly refreshed. I chose an elegant white business suit, meticulously tailored, which accentuated the confident demeanor of a successful woman. With light makeup and a spray of expensive perfume, I drove myself to work. As soon as I stepped into the large lobby of the office building, I saw a truly distasteful sight. David was standing awkwardly near the reception desk. His appearance was unbelievably pathetic. The shirt he wore yesterday was wrinkled, drenched in sweat stains, and covered in dirt. His hair was plastered to his forehead, unwashed, and his face was haggard, his eyes deeply sunken and dark-rimmed from a sleepless night in the heat. Worse still, a pungent, sour body odor emanated from him, causing the receptionists and security guards to wrinkle their noses and step back. As soon as he saw me walk through the glass doors, David, as if clutching at a lifeline, lunged towards me. He pointed a finger directly at my face, shouting loudly, trying to use the crowd's pressure to humiliate me. "Emily, you wicked, cold-blooded woman. If you're so brave, why didn't you just run away? Why did you show your face here? Are you plotting to kill my parents to torment my sister? Hand over the house documents right now so I can turn the electricity and water back on, or today I'll make you lose face in front of the whole company." David's commotion immediately drew the attention of numerous colleagues waiting for the elevator. All eyes turned to us, and whispers began to rise. A weaker woman might have been ashamed and dragged her husband to a secluded spot to beg him to stop, but not me. I stood tall, arms crossed over my chest, looking down at David with contempt. I took a deep breath and spoke loudly and clearly, making sure everyone around could hear every word. "David, stop your theatrics and playing the victim. That house was bought with my own savings from many years before we married. The deed is solely in my name. On our wedding day, your family didn't contribute a single dime for a dowry. Yet, I happily welcomed you to live with me. How have you treated me in return? Your sister, fresh from a divorce, moves in and turns the house into a mess, and you cruelly demand your wife move to a squalid $100 tin-roofed rental to make way for your entire family to enjoy. Your family's scheme to steal my home and kick me out failed, so now you're bitter and causing a scene here, aren't you?" The entire building lobby erupted. The whispers now turned into open criticism directed at David. Several female colleagues from HR frowned in disapproval. The security guards looked at David with undisguised scorn. Hearing my sharp exposé, David's face turned pale, then crimson. He hadn't expected me to dare expose his family's shameful truth in front of so many people. Embarrassed and humiliated, David started to lunge at me, but I stepped back sneeringly, adding, "Go look in the mirror, David. Your smell is polluting my office air. If you want a nice house, earn the money to buy one yourself. Don't bring your freeloading, property-grabbing habits here and flaunt them." David was speechless, unable to utter another word. Under the scrutinizing and contemptuous gaze of dozens of people, he covered his face, hung his head, and ran out of the building as if his life depended on it. I calmly adjusted the collar of my suit and smiled as I stepped into the elevator, earning the respect of those who witnessed the scene. The workday passed with a few curious glances from colleagues, but I completely ignored them. At exactly 5:30 p.m., I shut down my computer, grabbed my bag, and headed downstairs. Just as I stepped out of the building's revolving glass doors onto the wide plaza in front, I was intercepted by an angry mob. The 4 members of the Miller family, David, Ashley, Robert, and Carol, had been lying in wait. They all looked haggard and disheveled, drenched in sweat. Seeing me, Carol immediately resorted to the traditional tactics of uneducated women from the countryside. Disregarding her image, she tossed aside her conical hat and plopped down on the hot plaza pavement. She slapped her thighs repeatedly, looking up at the sky and wailing in a tragically fake manner. "Oh, heavens and earth! Come see how my daughter-in-law torments her in-laws. We raised our son, educated him, and he married her without demanding anything. But now, when his old parents come to visit, she cuts off the electricity and water, trying to force our whole family to die. This wicked, heartless daughter-in-law, wanting to commit murder without a knife, may heaven strike her down." Ashley, standing nearby, joined in, dabbing at dry tears with a tissue, whimpering and playing the role of a pitiful victim scorned by her sister-in-law. The noisy public spectacle, right at rush hour, immediately drew a large, curious crowd. Robert then stepped forward. He clasped his hands behind his back, puffing out his chest, affecting the air of a model father reprimanding his wayward child. He glared at me, his voice filled with patriarchal authority. "Emily, our family has a strong tradition of good upbringing. We cannot accept a disobedient and rebellious daughter-in-law like you. What you've done brings shame to the Miller family ancestors. I'm giving you one last chance to atone. Hand over your salary card and house documents to David so he can turn the utilities back on. Consider the money in the card compensation for our family's emotional distress. Otherwise, our family will sue you, make you lose your job, and never be able to hold your head up in this city." I stood with my arms crossed, calmly enjoying the cheap melodrama unfolding before me. Their bottomless greed truly knew no bounds. Even after being trapped in that inferno, looking so wretched, they still dreamed of seizing my salary card and house deed. Surrounded by a crowd of strangers, facing their blatant slanders, a powerful surge of strength coursed through my veins. The last ounce of my patience evaporated, replaced by the fierce self-preservation instinct of an independent woman. I swept my cold gaze over each member of the Miller family, finally settling on Robert's brazen face. The crowd around us was murmuring. Some, not understanding the full story, began to point fingers and blame me. I cleared my throat, my voice just loud enough to resonate, clear and distinct so everyone could hear. "How can you speak of good upbringing here without embarrassment? I welcome your visit to your son. But your son, my husband, forced me to move out of the house I paid millions for, to give it entirely to his family. He forced me to rent a $100 tin-roofed room, enduring heat and filth, so his family could enjoy air conditioning and soft beds. What kind of good upbringing teaches a son to steal his wife's house to support his entire family?" The murmuring crowd suddenly fell silent. Public opinion spun 180 degrees. The women present began to speak up, defending me and criticizing David's family as greedy and shameless. Exposed right there in the open, Robert's face turned purple with humiliation. Losing all reason, he pointed directly at David and roared, "David, what are you standing there for? Hit her for me. Teach this insolent wife a lesson. Slap her teeth out so she knows what family rules are." Receiving his father's command, David, like a mad beast, his eyes bloodshot, tensed his muscles and charged straight at me, his arm raised high, aiming to deliver a thunderous slap to my face. But he was mistaken. I was not a fragile flower to be assaulted. Years of self-defense training in college had honed my reflexes to an incredibly sharp degree. Just as David's hand was about to connect with my face, I coldly took a step back, simultaneously turning my body slightly to the side. The momentum was too strong, causing David to miss completely, losing his balance. His entire large frame stumbled and then fell face first onto the hard plaza pavement. A dull thud echoed. David lifted his head, blood oozing from the corner of his mouth, his face twisted in pain. Seeing her precious son injured, Carol, who had been sitting on the ground feigning distress, suddenly sprang up as if she'd been splashed with lime. She shrieked piercingly, her fingers clenched like hawk's talons, fiercely lunging to grab my hair and scratch my face. "You dare hit my son, you wretch!" I showed no fear. As she lunged close to me, I swiftly used both hands to push forcefully against her shoulders, a decisive defensive shove. The justifiable self-defense push made Carol stagger, recoil a few steps, then fall with a loud yelp into a nearby plant pot, her backside hitting the ground hard. Ashley, standing by, shrieked in terror and rushed to help her mother. I dusted off my suit, standing defiantly in the plaza, my gaze cold as I looked down at those writhing at my feet. "Don't force my hand again. Your family is accustomed to freeloading and bullying others. Do you think everyone is easy to pick on? Building security is coming now, and I am ready to call the police to address your intentional assault." Saying this, I calmly pulled out my phone and pre-dialed the emergency 3-digit number, my eyes never leaving the wretched family, who were trembling with fear and humiliation. The last shred of affection between David and me, and what was called my in-laws, was officially buried forever beneath the cold pavement of this plaza. Just as the situation in the plaza in front of the office building became utterly chaotic, a squad of security guards in light blue uniforms rushed out from inside the building. They blew their whistles loudly, spreading their arms wide to decisively disperse the curious and pointing crowd. 2 burly guards stepped forward, forming a necessary safe barrier between me and the Miller family. The remaining guards quickly helped David to his feet. The corner of David's mouth was now swollen, blood seeping out and staining the collar of his wrinkled, dirty shirt. Carol was still sitting on the pavement, slapping her hands against the ground, continuously yelling curses with ear-splitting language. Robert's face was beet red, furious, wanting to rush forward and attack me, but the line of security guards held him back firmly. The appearance of the security team did not diminish the Miller family's aggression. On the contrary, Robert seemed to think that having people restrain him meant he had to act even tougher to save face. He bellowed, demanding the guards arrest me, falsely accusing me of being an unruly daughter-in-law who dared to strike her husband and assault her mother-in-law in broad daylight. However, those who had witnessed the scene from the beginning loudly refuted him, testifying that it was Robert himself who had ordered his son to attack me first. I had merely reacted in self-defense, causing David to fall, and my mother-in-law had aggressively lunged at me, trying to scratch me, which led to her being pushed away. The argument was as noisy as a fish market in the middle of a high-end commercial district. I stood back, behind the security personnel, my eyes coldly sweeping over the greedy and cruel faces of those I had once called family. My heart now felt no pain or regret. My endurance had reached its final limit. Faced with their thuggish behavior, all reason, morality, or patience became meaningless. I reached into my purse and pulled out my smartphone. Without hesitation or delay, I dialed the emergency number for the Rapid Response Police Force, 911. The operator quickly picked up, and a calm, professional male voice spoke. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice utterly composed, articulate, and clear with every word. I reported in detail that I was being surrounded by a group of my husband's family members who were threatening extortion and had attempted physical assault right in the plaza of the office building in the district. I also provided the precise building address and the current tense situation so the police could grasp it. Hearing me call the police, Ashley, standing next to her mother, began to turn pale. She tugged at Robert's sleeve, her eyes revealing the fear of someone accustomed to being arrogant in the countryside but cowardly when facing the law in the city. Despite this, Robert brushed his daughter's hand away, deliberately raising his voice in defiance. "I'll call the city police myself to settle this. As her father-in-law, I have the right to discipline my daughter-in-law. What law dares interfere in my family's internal affairs?" Less than 10 minutes after the call ended, the urgent wail of sirens pierced the noisy atmosphere of the plaza. A patrol car, white and blue, skidded to a halt at the curb. 3 police officers in crisp uniforms, carrying their equipment and bright flashlights, quickly exited the vehicle, parted the crowd, and headed straight to the scene. The appearance of law enforcement officers, with their dignified bearing, immediately brought order to the atmosphere. The curious crowd automatically retreated to make way. Carol's wailing and complaining suddenly ceased. She quickly pulled her hands back, furtively glancing at the officers. David hung his head, covering his swollen lip, looking pitifully cowardly. The police captain, who appeared to be the commanding officer, surveyed the scene and then spoke loudly, requesting everyone maintain order. He turned to ask who had made the call. I stepped forward, nodded to the officers, and confirmed I was the one who reported it. Immediately, Robert interrupted, hastily trying to twist the story to his advantage. He accused me of being an unfilial daughter-in-law who arbitrarily cut off electricity and water, kicking her in-laws out into the street in the scorching heat. He also claimed I had attacked my husband, making his mouth bleed, and shoved my mother-in-law, bruising her. He demanded the police arrest me to set an example for unruly women. The captain patiently listened to Robert's entire statement, then turned to me, asking me to present my side of the story. I calmly recounted the entire incident as objectively as possible, neither adding nor omitting anything. I emphasized that my husband's family had arbitrarily shown up, demanding to occupy the apartment registered in my name, forcing me to live in a squalid rental. When I exercised my right as the homeowner to cut off utility services to protect my property, they came to my workplace to humiliate me, threatening to coerce me into handing over the house deed and bank cards. I also clearly stated that David's fall and Carol's fall were entirely due to my legitimate self-defense when they deliberately tried to attack me, witnessed by dozens of people present. To prove that my words were entirely based on legal grounds, I opened a property management app on my phone, accessed the government's online information portal, and showed the captain an image of the apartment deed, clearly in my name only. Along with that, I presented my personal identification to verify my identity. The captain took my phone, thoroughly checked it, cross-referenced the information, and then nodded, returning it to me. He turned and walked closer to Robert's family, his expression becoming extremely stern. In a strong, admonishing voice, the officer clearly explained to Robert that his family's actions were in serious violation of the law, demanding property they did not own, gathering a crowd at another citizen's workplace to disturb public order, and engaging in acts threatening others' health were criminal offenses that could lead to prosecution. The police also emphasized that family relationships were not a shield to cover up illegal activities. The house was my personal property. I had every right to decide how to use it. No one had the right to interfere with cutting off electricity or water. Hearing the police officer's thorough, reasonable, and sharp analysis, Robert's arrogant attitude completely collapsed. His face turned ashen, his lips trembling, unable to utter a word. Carol cowered nervously next to Ashley. The two women looked at each other with extreme panic. David trembled like a leaf, continuously bowing his head, meekly apologizing to the officers, swearing he would never repeat such actions. The captain recorded the ID information of all 4 individuals in his notebook, sternly warning them that if they continued to loiter and cause trouble around the building or threaten me, they would immediately be taken to the police station for detention and processing. The surrounding crowd applauded the police's decisive action. The Miller family was utterly humiliated, with nowhere to hide. Under the contemptuous gaze of dozens of people, the 4 of them trudged away, leaning on each other, looking dejected and disheveled, like the most pathetic losers. I politely thanked the police officers and the building security team for their timely intervention in protecting my safety. After the police car drove away, I adjusted my clothes, got into my car, started the engine, and merged into the busy late afternoon traffic, leaving behind the dirty tangle I had just personally swept out of my life. After driving away from the office area, I didn't go straight back to the hotel, but pulled into a quiet coffee shop on a tree-lined street. I ordered a hot chamomile tea and leaned back in a plush armchair, allowing my mind to relax after the stressful events that had just unfolded. Today's battle in the plaza, while temporarily quelling the aggression of David's family, had not made me naive about their true nature. Their inflated pride, deep-seated greed, and bitterness from being publicly shamed would certainly not let them give up so easily. They were cornered, without money, without decent lodging in this expensive city. They would try every trick to get back into my apartment. The thought of the spare key David still held sparked a sharp idea in my mind. Surely tonight, when darkness fell and everyone was asleep, they would sneak back to the apartment. Even without electricity and water, it was still a free shelter from the rain and sun, safer than wandering the streets or paying for a motel. If I let them step foot in the house again, they would just cause trouble and refuse to leave, and all my efforts to push them out of my life would be in vain. I decided I had to pull up the weeds by the root, completely cutting off all their escape routes. I took out my phone and searched for professional electronic door lock installation services in the city. I chose the most reputable company, one that offered 24/7 emergency support. The call quickly connected. I explained my need to replace the entire traditional mechanical lock system of my main door with the most advanced smart electronic lock available on the market. I gave very strict requirements. The new lock had to have 3-dimensional facial recognition, biometric fingerprint unlocking, anti-duplication, encrypted keycards, and direct connection to a mobile phone app. Most importantly, it needed to be equipped with a clear night vision infrared camera, integrated with a high-intensity anti-pry alarm system, and automatically send warning messages to the owner's phone. The consultant quickly finalized the order and promised to send their best technician to my apartment in less than an hour. I paid the expensive full cost up front via bank transfer, then stood up, left the coffee shop, and drove back to my condo. Arriving at my door, the hallway was silent. I opened the door and stepped inside. A musty, stifling smell immediately hit me. The house was empty of people, but full of the mess David's family had left behind. Clothes were scattered everywhere, and unwashed cups and glasses were left on the table. I didn't bother cleaning. I just opened all the balcony windows wide to let the fresh air blow in and dispel the stuffiness. True to the appointment, 30 minutes later, the locksmith arrived with his specialized tools and a brand new sealed electronic lock. Under my close supervision, the technician quickly removed the old mechanical lock, drilled, and adjusted the mortise on the thick oak door. In just over an hour of diligent work, the sleek, modern black smart door lock was perfectly installed, fitting snugly into the door. The lock core, made of anti-cut steel alloy, was incredibly sturdy. The technician guided me through setting up the management app on my phone, registering my fingerprint, facial recognition, and establishing the master password. I carefully tested all the features. From my phone screen, I could clearly see the entire hallway area in front of the door through the lock's wide-angle camera. The image was extremely sharp, even in low light. The alarm system was also tested. The siren shrieked piercingly, loud enough to wake an entire floor if someone attempted to physically tamper with the door. With everything done, I gave the technician a generous bonus to thank him for his excellent service. I took the old lock and the bunch of keys and tossed them directly into the trash bin in the lobby. Standing there, looking at my solid wooden door, now equipped with a modern layer of protection, I smiled with satisfaction. This house was my fortress. It represented my hard work and effort. Absolutely no one would be allowed to trespass without my consent. Locking the door securely, I pulled my small suitcase and leisurely hailed a taxi back to the 5-star hotel. The cool, warmly lit hotel room awaited me. I took a refreshing shower, blow-dried my long hair, and put on soft silk pajamas. I ordered room service to bring up a fresh fruit platter and a glass of fruit juice. Lying on the plush bed, I opened the camera app on my phone, setting the motion detection alert to the highest sensitivity. I transformed myself into a relaxed audience member, sipping my juice, calmly waiting for tonight's best play to begin. The hotel room was silent, save for the gentle hum of the air conditioning. I drifted into a fitful sleep, still holding a high level of vigilance. The digital clock on the bedside table blinked, green numbers signaling that it was 2 o'clock in the morning. This was the time when people fell into their deepest sleep. The world was enveloped in silent darkness. Also the ideal time for those with dark intentions to act. Just then, my smartphone, placed next to my pillow, vibrated violently, accompanied by a rapid series of beeping alerts, shattering the quiet of the room. I jolted awake, my brain immediately recognizing the situation. I grabbed my phone and swiped to unlock it. The Smart Lock Management app sent a stark red notification. Unusual movement detected and deliberate force applied to the main apartment door. I tapped the live view icon, and the screen immediately displayed a clear view of the hallway area in front of my door, thanks to the infrared camera technology. The transmitted image made my eyes widen in astonishment. Even though I had anticipated this situation, 4 dark figures were clustered in front of my door, none other than David's family. Their appearance now was exactly like professional burglars. David wore a black t-shirt, his arms tensed, clutching a large, solid steel sledgehammer. Robert stood beside him, brandishing a meter-long steel crowbar, the kind typically used to pry open manhole covers or demolish walls. Carol and Ashley stood guard on either side, their eyes darting back and forth along the deserted hallway. Unbelievable. A family that constantly boasted about their good upbringing and morality was now gathered in the dead of night, carrying heavy tools to break into someone else's home. Through the highly sensitive embedded microphone on the lock, their whispered conversations came to my ears, clear as day. "David, be careful when you open the lock, or it'll make a racket. Didn't you say this key would open it? Why are you still fumbling with it?" Robert's irritable voice cut through, filled with impatience and exhaustion. David, sweating and struggling to shove the old mechanical key into the invisible space on the sleek, smooth surface of the new electronic lock, angrily replied, "Dad, just hold on. Emily is too clever. She called someone to replace the damn lock with a fancy electronic touch, sensitive one. The mechanical key won't fit, Dad. She's intentionally cutting off our last resort, not letting us into sleep." Carol, hearing this, slapped her thigh loudly and shrieked curses through gritted teeth. "Oh, heaven and earth! Some daughter-in-law! Is she trying to make us old folks die on the streets in the middle of the night like this? In that case, just smash the damn door down. It's my son's house. I have the right to enter. You, take that sledgehammer and smash that black screen on the lock until it shatters. then use the crowbar to pry out the core. Hurry up before the security patrol comes. Following his mother's urging, David stepped back, raised the heavy sledgehammer high above his head, aimed directly at the smart door lock's touchscreen, and prepared to strike a fatal blow. However, his violent action triggered the lock's self-defense system. A high-powered alarm suddenly shrieked piercingly. The sound echoed, tearing through the silent space of the floor. The lights in front flashed continuously, turning a whole section of the hallway bright red. All 4 members of the Miller family jumped back in fright. Ashley covered her ears and sank to the floor, while David fumbled, clutching the sledgehammer, not knowing how to silence the alarm and salvage the situation. The recording had captured all their organized vandalism in sharp detail, complete with audio of their conspired plot. All legal evidence was now firmly in my hands. Not wasting another second, I exited the camera app and dialed the direct line for the precinct police. My voice was urgent and decisive. "Hello, officer on duty. I am the owner of apartment 12, a 5 in the luxury condo building in your precinct. Currently, a group of unfamiliar individuals is using a sledgehammer and a crowbar to break down my door, attempting to forcefully enter. The security camera is live streaming the entire event. The situation is very dangerous. There could be theft of valuable property. I request that you dispatch officers to the scene immediately." The police dispatcher, hearing the report of a break-in attempt with demolition tools in the middle of the night, immediately recognized this as an emergency situation with serious criminal implications. They asked me to stay on the line. Simultaneously, they radioed an order to a patrol unit nearby to rush to the building. I sat on the bed, my heart pounding, not from fear, but from the extreme exhilaration of knowing that the sword of justice was being raised, poised to strike these arrogant individuals. Things had gone beyond normal family disputes. It was time for the law to speak. Less than 5 minutes after my emergency call, the scene captured by the phone camera in the hallway outside my door became incredibly dramatic. The Miller family was still fumbling in a state of panic. The alarm from the smart lock continued to shriek piercingly without pause. David and Robert, drenched in sweat, desperately tried to hit the lock with their hands to silence it, but to no avail. The thick oak door and its robust steel bolt system remained unyielding. Carol and Ashley paced nervously, their faces devoid of color, terrified that the noise would wake the neighbors. Just as David swung the sledgehammer, intending to recklessly smash the lock once more, the elevator chime rang. A dry ding. The elevator doors slid open. A team of 5 police officers in neat uniforms, carrying their equipment and super bright flashlights, rushed out. Their flashlights swept bright beams along the hallway, shining directly onto the startled faces of the 4 individuals brandishing their tools in front of my door. A solemn voice, carrying the weight of the law, boomed. "Everyone freeze! Drop your weapons now! This is the police!" The sudden and overwhelming appearance of law enforcement was like a thunderbolt striking David's family. David flinched violently, his hands fumbling, loosening his grip on the heavy, solid steel sledgehammer, which weighed several pounds. The hammer fell straight to the floor, slamming onto David's big toe. A heartbreaking scream erupted. David clutched his agonizing foot, hopping on one leg before collapsing to the floor, groaning in pain, his face contorted and pale from his self-inflicted punishment. Robert, seeing the police approach with an extremely stern demeanor, his old hands trembled uncontrollably, no longer strong enough to hold onto the crowbar. The steel bar clattered onto the tiled floor with a harsh sound. He hastily raised his hands in the air, stammering, trying to explain. "Officers, you've misunderstood. I'm the father-in-law of the homeowner. We're just coming home to sleep at our son's place, not stealing or robbing. Please don't arrest us." Carol completely lost control. As soon as she saw the gleaming metal handcuffs in the officer's hands, her legs turned to jelly, and she crumpled to the floor with a thud. She covered her head with both hands, no longer daring to shriek or wail as she had that afternoon, but only sobbing uncontrollably. Ashley huddled against the wall, hands clasped in supplication, tears and snot streaming down her face, which had been carefully made up earlier in the day but was now smudged. The officers ignored their clumsy excuses. With professional efficiency, they quickly moved to confiscate the sledgehammer and crowbar as evidence. 2 officers approached David and Robert, expertly performing a professional handcuffing maneuver, decisively snapping the handcuffs onto the wrists of the two aggressive men. The sharp click of the cuffs rang out coldly, sealing the fate of their reckless and lawless actions. Carol and Ashley, though not handcuffed, were instructed to stand close to the wall, with an officer standing close by to supervise them. The lead officer announced the reason for the arrest in a loud, clear voice. We received a report from the homeowner that a group of individuals attempted to illegally break into a citizen's residence in the early morning hours, carrying crude tools with destructive intent. Your actions show signs of property damage and unlawful entry. We request that everyone maintain order and cooperatively accompany us to the precinct for clarification of the incident. All statements made at this time will be recorded in the official report. Under the strict escort of law enforcement, the four members of the Miller family took heavy steps toward the elevator. David limped, his big toe swollen and bloody, his head bowed, not daring to look at anyone. Robert trudged along, his usual imposing patriarchal demeanor completely vanished, replaced by the shame and humiliation of a criminal. Down in the condo lobby, a specialized police van was waiting. All four were loaded into the enclosed back of the vehicle. The slam of the van door signaled the beginning of a long, dark night in legal custody. From my phone screen in the hotel room, I watched the entire arrest process from beginning to end in silence. A faint, cold smile curled on my lips. That was it. Their foolish break-in drama, self-written and self-performed, had received its deserving outcome. I took a screenshot of David in handcuffs and carefully saved the video evidence in a secure folder. Closing my phone, I pulled the covers up and lay down in bed. A feeling of profound relief spread throughout my body. Tonight, those would-be thieves would be enjoying jail food, experiencing the cold atmosphere of a cell, giving their hot heads and bottomless greed time to reflect. The next morning, bright summer rays pierced through the hotel curtains, waking me. My spirits were soaring. There was no sign of fatigue after such a tumultuous night. At exactly 8 o'clock, my phone rang. It was the police investigator from the precinct, inviting me to the station to cooperate in clarifying the attempted break-in case from earlier that morning. I calmly showered, changed into a neat, polite business outfit, applied light makeup, and drove myself to the police station. Entering the General Investigation Office, the faint smell of cigarette smoke mixed with the scent of ink and paper, creating the distinct tense atmosphere of a legal environment. The investigator greeted me very warmly. After offering me a seat and some water, he asked me to provide all evidence related to the incident. I took out my phone and transferred the high-quality video, complete with audio, recording David's family discussing their plan and using a sledgehammer to smash the smart lock, to the police. Watching the video, the officer shook his head in resignation at the recklessness and blatant disregard for the law shown by those who claimed to be my in-laws. Once I had finished giving my statement and signed the incident report, the officer informed me that David's family was currently being held in the waiting room next door. He asked for my opinion, whether I wanted to meet them to discuss a civil reconciliation. After all, the incident stemmed from an internal family dispute, and the property damage wasn't too severe. If I agreed to withdraw my complaint, law enforcement would proceed with administrative penalties and educational deterrence, then release them. I firmly shook my head. Any leniency at this point, to me, would be a crime against myself. I requested that the officer allow me to step into the waiting room for a direct confrontation, to definitively end any glimmer of hope they might have. The waiting room door opened, revealing a pathetic sight. After a sleepless night in a cold detention cell, without food, drink, or a chance to clean up, the four members of the Miller family looked withered and gaunt, like dried leaves. David sat slumped on a long bench, his clothes disheveled, his foot, struck by the hammer, swollen and unable to wear a shoe. Carol and Ashley's eyes were puffy from crying too much. Seeing me enter, they cringed like mice seeing a cat. Robert's eyes were tightly shut, his old face wrinkled with exhaustion and humiliation. Seeing my appearance alongside the investigator, David, like a drowning man clutching at a straw, used his uninjured foot to hop towards me, suddenly falling to his knees on the cold floor. His hands clasped together, he begged repeatedly, Tears streaming down his pale cheeks, his voice choked and desperate. "Emily, my wife, I know I was wrong. I apologize 1,000 times over. Please forgive me. Please withdraw the complaint. Don't let the police detain me. If I am temporarily detained, the company will fire me. And with a criminal record, how will I live? Mom and Dad are old. Please have mercy and give my family a way out. From now on, I swear I'll listen to everything you say. I'll never demand anything again." Robert also shuffled closer, his tone devoid of any former patriarchal authority. He humbled himself, begging pitifully. "Emily, Mom, and Dad were wrong. Please, daughter-in-law, be generous and forgive us. We're old and frail. We can't endure being in jail. We promise to pack our things and go back home today. We'll never dare to bother you in the city again." I stood tall, arms crossed over my chest, my gaze cold as ice, staring directly at those kneeling before me. Any pity I might have had died the day David heartlessly told me to live in a tin-roofed rental to make way for them. Now they were begging, not out of remorse or acknowledgement of their mistakes, but simply because they feared losing their jobs, going to jail, and facing legal punishment. Their greedy, selfish nature would never change. If I were to show weakness today, tomorrow they would find another way to viciously bite back at me. I took a deep breath, my voice sharp and clear, cutting off all of David's illusory hopes. "Get up, David. Stop kneeling and playing this charade in front of me. The hammer blows you struck against my door last night didn't just damage property. They completely shattered the last bit of marital affection between us. I am not a living Buddha to bestow forgiveness upon those who constantly try to steal. The law has clear regulations. If you do wrong, you must bear responsibility before the law. I absolutely will not withdraw my complaint. There will be no reconciliation. All damages, from the smart lock to my emotional distress, you and your family must compensate me for every single dollar." With that, I turned my back and walked straight out of the waiting room, not sparing even a glance backward. Behind me, David cried out in despair. Carol wailed, calling her son's name. Based on the serious nature of the incident and the irrefutable evidence, the police department issued an administrative detention order for David to investigate the act of property damage. Robert, Carol, and Ashley were fined a significant sum for disturbing public order and were also required to pay compensation for the damaged door lock to me before being released. I walked out of the police station gates, taking a deep breath of the fresh morning air. The toughest battle had ended, with reason and law emerging as the complete victors. My next step would be to personally clean up the remaining garbage in this rotten marriage to reclaim my freedom and peace. After leaving the police precinct, I didn't immediately return to the hotel but decided to visit my condo. David was currently under administrative detention, and his parents and sister, after paying their fines, would certainly have no face to show around this area again. The oak door with its modern smart lock greeted me with a familiar beep. I stepped inside. Silence enveloped me. The apartment was still as messy as it had been when David's family left last night. A musty, suffocating odor due to lack of ventilation permeated every corner. I proceeded to open all the windows and balcony doors wide to welcome the cool breezes of the summer morning into the house. The wind swept through the curtains, carrying fresh air that washed away the unpleasant smells and negative energy that had accumulated over the past few days. Next, I went around, picking up plastic bottles and plastic bags filled with leftover food that Ashley had scattered on the living room table. Entering the bedroom, I opened David's closet. His shirts and dress pants hung haphazardly, mixed with some faded t-shirts. Looking at the familiar belongings of the man I had once shared my life with, an overwhelming sense of emptiness welled up inside me. There was no more pain, no more anger, just a cold finality. I pulled a large fabric suitcase from the top of the closet and began to gather all of David's belongings, stuffing them inside. I wanted to completely clear away every trace of him from my living space, preparing to permanently expel him from my life. While busily cleaning out the nightstand drawer, my hand accidentally brushed against a hard, rectangular object carefully hidden beneath a stack of old documents. It was an old tablet. David had bought this tablet years ago. Recently, he had claimed the battery was faulty, constantly shutting down, so he tossed it aside and stopped using it. A woman's intuition told me something was amiss. David was usually very careful with electronics. If a device was broken, he would typically get it repaired or sell it for parts, rarely hiding it carefully at the bottom of a drawer like this. I took the tablet to the living room and plugged it into a portable power bank. About 10 minutes later, the screen lit up, displaying the boot up icon. My heart skipped a beat. The home screen appeared, and what surprised me most was that the tablet had no screen lock password. Perhaps David had been overconfident, thinking I would never touch his old things, or he thought hiding it at the bottom of the drawer was secure enough. My finger glided lightly across the touchscreen, checking the applications one by one. Most were ordinary news reading and movie watching apps. However, my eyes stopped at an online messaging app and an online banking app hidden in a folder named Above and Beyond. With surprising calm, I tapped the messaging app icon. David's account automatically logged in. The chat history appeared, dense with messages, and the pinned item, the most frequently messaged, was not me, but a family chat group named Miller Family Home and a private conversation with Ashley. I took a deep breath, telling myself to stay strong, then began to read each message. The words appeared on the screen, sharp and clear, and each sentence was like an invisible knife, slowly, bit by bit, stripping away the cruel, calculated true face of the man I had called my husband for 3 years. A shocking secret was slowly being brought to light. I scrolled my finger to reread the message exchange between David and Ashley from about a month ago, which was when Ashley had just finalized her divorce back home. Ashley's message appeared, full of whining and demands. She clearly wrote that she was utterly devastated by her ex-husband's abandonment. All her friends used fancy designer items. If she didn't have an expensive item to wear, she would be mocked by her neighbors back home. Ashley wheedled David into buying her a designer handbag worth up to $2,000 to console her grief. What left me speechless was not the sister-in-law's unreasonable demand, but David's indulgent and heartless reply. David messaged back, reassuring Ashley, telling her to come to the city without worry, and he would take care of everything. David explained, "Lately my salary and Emily's salary are combined into one account for living expenses. I will secretly withdraw that $2,000 to buy the handbag for Ashley." Not only that, but David also used extremely vicious words to badmouth me to his sister. He called me a pragmatic woman, always only caring about work, and that because I earned more money, I was always bossy. He advised Ashley to feel free to use my things, saying there was nothing to fear. A chill ran down my spine. $2,000 was not a small sum. It represented my sweat and tears, the nights I stayed up late working on marketing projects for the company. We had agreed to combine our incomes to plan for our future. Yet, he brazenly took my hard-earned money to buy a luxury handbag for his lazy sister. But David's cruelty and exploitative nature didn't stop there. I trembled as I switched to the online banking app on the tablet. The login password was automatically saved. The account interface appeared. I immediately accessed the transaction history for the past year. A colossal sum of money stared back at me, leaving me stunned, feeling as if I couldn't breathe. In total, there were 5 transfer transactions from our joint savings account to an account registered in Carol's name, David's mother. The smallest was $3,000. The largest reached $10,000. Adding all the amounts together, the total came to nearly $30,000. I quickly reopened the Miller family chat group to cross-reference the information. In the group, Carol continuously sent images of blueprints for a grand 3-story house in their hometown. She messaged, urging David to quickly send money to keep pace with the construction schedule. David constantly promised, reporting each transfer in detail and strictly cautioning his parents to keep it absolutely secret, not to let me know a single word. He claimed that this $30,000 was all of our wedding gifts and the joint savings I had entrusted him to manage monthly. It turned out that all this time, I had simply been a diligent money-making tool for the Miller family to exploit. They had provided no wedding dowry, lived in my house for free, and used my money for food and living expenses. And now, they were also squandering our entire accumulated capital to build their own property back home. The plan to kick me out to a rundown rental apartment a few days ago was just the last straw. Their malicious intent to brazenly steal had been meticulously calculated for a very long time. I didn't shed a single tear. The pain had frozen into extreme indignation and an iron will to fight back. With the clear-headedness of a marketing professional, I quickly took out my own phone, opened the camera, and photographed every screen of messages. I took clear shots of every bank statement, showing the specific times, dates, and transaction details. I sent all this sharp evidence to a secure cloud storage email. With this irrefutable proof in hand, I was certain to win the battle for justice for myself. After completing the evidence storage, I put everything back in its original state, picked up my bag, and left the house. My next destination was the office of a highly reputable family law attorney I had known for a long time. Entering the professional environment of the law office, I clearly and articulately presented the entire situation from beginning to end. I placed my personal tablet on the table, opened the image file containing the messages and bank statements for the lawyer to review. The experienced senior lawyer carefully read each message, thoroughly checking the dates and details of the financial transactions. He nodded in understanding, his eyes showing clear sympathy for my situation. With his solid professional knowledge, the lawyer explained my legal rights. The nearly $30,000 was comprised of wedding gifts from both sides and income earned by both spouses during the marriage. According to the law, that money was entirely community property. David's arbitrary withdrawal of such a large sum and transfer to his mother to build a private home without my discussion or consent constituted asset dissipation, a serious violation of joint ownership rights. The lawyer confidently affirmed that with this clear, transparent electronic evidence, I had sufficient legal grounds to file a lawsuit, demanding David and his family return half of that amount or even the entire sum if it could be proven that he had violated his spousal contribution duties. After receiving the consultation, I didn't hesitate for another second. I immediately asked the lawyer to draft a petition for a unilateral divorce. I sat at the desk, picked up a blue pen, and decisively signed my name in the bottom right corner of the paper. Each sharp, strong stroke of my handwriting etched onto the white paper, officially putting an end to a marriage filled with calculation and deceit. The feeling at that moment was not regret, but an immense sense of relief and liberation. Finally, I had personally untied myself from the dark chains of my life. Leaving the lawyer's office with a complete lawsuit file in hand, I passed by the police precinct. I went in and requested a copy of the administrative penalty decision for disturbing public order and David's detention order to add to my file. Holding the decision document, stamped with the red seal of the authorities, a cold thought flashed through my mind. David constantly threatened to make me lose my job, always presenting himself as a respectable person in the workplace. Well, I would let him taste the bitter fruit of his own sowing. I stopped at a print shop on the street and made multiple photocopies of David's detention order. Next, I went to the central post office, bought a large envelope, and put the photocopies inside. For the sender, I left it completely blank. For the recipient, I clearly wrote the name of the HR department director at the company where David worked, along with a bold red warning about an employee's ethical and legal violations. I sent the letter using express overnight delivery. Tomorrow, when this letter landed on the HR department's desk, David's thuggish, criminal, and law-breaking nature would be nakedly exposed. A large company, valuing its image as much as David's employer, would certainly never tolerate an employee caught in legal trouble, temporarily detained by the police for property damage and disturbing public order. The judgment for the betrayer and exploiter would not only be the divorce papers but also the complete collapse of his career and reputation. 4 days after the incident at the police station, David's administrative detention period ended. I had proactively moved back into my condo, enjoying the clean, cool living space after having it disinfected and hiring cleaners to remove all traces of the Miller family. The smart lock functioned perfectly, providing me with a sense of absolute security. Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the video intercom rang from outside the door. I looked at my phone screen and saw David standing forlornly in the hallway. His appearance now was 100 times more pathetic than the night he was escorted away by the police. His beard was overgrown and unshaven, his face gaunt, his eyes dull and lifeless, and his big toe was still wrapped in a white bandage, making him limp. I opened the door, standing to block the entrance, my demeanor utterly cold. Seeing me, David quickly braced himself against the doorframe, his voice trembling, hoarse, and filled with panic. "Emily, can I come in for a bit? Please, I beg you. I was just released this morning, rushed to the company, and immediately received a termination letter. They said I violated the law and harmed the company's image. I've lost everything, Emily. Please have mercy and save me. Can you go to the company and explain for me that this was just a family dispute?" I looked at the man standing before me, finding it utterly laughable. Even at the very last minute, this man still only thought of himself, still wanted to use me to clean up the mess his greed had created. I took half a step back, pulled a thick stack of documents from my jacket pocket, and forcefully threw them at his chest. The papers scattered across the hallway floor. "Open your eyes and look closely. I already know everything. From you taking our shared salary to buy a $2,000 handbag for your spoiled sister, to you secretly dissipating nearly $30,000 in wedding gifts and savings, sending it back home for your mother to build a house. All the messages where you cursed me and scorned me, I have photographed every single word." Hearing me expose his shocking secret, David's face changed from pale to ashen. His legs gave out, he lost his balance, and he completely crumpled to the floor. He flipped through each page of the bank statements, each clearly printed image of the messages, his mouth stammering inarticulate sounds. "Emily, how do you have these things?" I stood with my arms crossed, my sharp voice echoing through the silent hallway. "Heaven has eyes, David. Did you think you could hide it forever? Those documents are the unilateral divorce petition I've already filed with the court. Along with it is a demand for repayment of the $30,000 in community property. I'm giving you and your family exactly 7 days. Either arrange to return the full amount to me, or I will file a lawsuit for asset dissipation, demanding that the enforcement agency foreclose on the 3-story house your parents just built back home to settle the debt. Exploiters like your family must pay for every single dollar of sweat and tears you have stolen from me." David looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears, reaching out to grab my leg and beg. "Emily, I was wrong. I was wrong 1,000 times. I'm sorry. The house back home is still under construction. All the money has already gone into materials. Where will I get $30,000 to pay you back? Give me more time. Can I work and pay you back little by little? Please don't seize my parents' house. They're old. They can't handle this shock." I coldly stepped back, avoiding his filthy touch. "When you and your parents brought a sledgehammer to break down my door, when you ganged up to kick me out to a rental, did you ever think about my endurance? 7 days. If the money isn't returned to my account, we'll meet in court. Now please leave my sight. Don't stain my doorstep for another second." With those final words, I slammed the door shut. The dry click of the electronic lock echoed. Outside, David slumped against the door, sobbing like a child who had lost a toy. But crocodile tears could not move a heart that had been wounded too deeply. The betrayal of the ungrateful had truly come to fruition. Only 3 days after my ultimatum, Robert and Carol, disheveled, dragged themselves from their squalid suburban rental to my condo building. Building security had received orders not to allow David's family into the apartment area, so they called me down to the lobby to meet them. I leisurely walked out into the grand lobby. The 4 members of the Miller family were huddled in a corner, their arrogant and haughty demeanor from the day they first arrived in the city completely gone. David looked utterly defeated. Ashley hung her head, not daring to look at anyone, clutching a plastic bag containing a few wrinkled clothes. Robert's hair had much more grey, and the wrinkles on his forehead had deepened with weariness. Seeing me approach, Robert took a step forward, trembling, as he pulled a savings passbook and a stack of cash, carefully wrapped in newspaper, from his chest pocket. He placed everything on the small glass table in the waiting area, his voice choked with profound regret. "Daughter-in-law? No, Emily. Mom and Dad came here to see you one last time to say we're sorry. We were ignorant country folk. Seeing our son making money, we became greedy and incited him to hide money to build a house. We thought we were providing for the Miller family, but we never expected our greed and selfishness to lead David to lose his job, lose his wife, and face legal trouble. These past few days in that rundown rental, being cursed at and evicted by the landlady because we couldn't pay, we truly understood what it's like to be homeless and adrift. You were right to kick us out. We reaped what we sowed." Robert paused, letting out a deep, sorrowful sigh, then pointed to the money on the table. "We had to mortgage our ancestral land back home to relatives and borrow from everywhere else to gather enough to return $30,000 to you. Please accept this money and, please, withdraw your lawsuit so we can keep the old house back home, so we have a place to live in our old age. David has already signed the mutual divorce petition. Please release him." Carol, standing behind him, also wiped away tears, nodding in confirmation of her husband's words. Their remorse now seemed genuine. A change in perspective bought at too high a price. Their family's honor shattered, their son's career destroyed, his name tarnished. I looked at the money on the table, carefully checking the bank transfer confirmation documents they provided. Once I confirmed that all my hard-earned money had been fully returned, I picked up the divorce petition with David's signature. All legal procedures were now smoothly concluded. I looked Robert directly in the eye, my tone calm, no longer bitter, but utterly serious. "I have received all my money. I will instruct my lawyer to withdraw the asset dissipation lawsuit. I hope that through this painful lesson, you too will understand that family happiness cannot be built on deceit, exploitation, and trampling on others. I wish you both peace back home, and please teach David and Ashley how to live decent lives as human beings." Robert nodded repeatedly, profusely thanking me. Then the Miller family quietly picked up their old suitcases and trudged out through the building's revolving glass doors. Their figures cast long shadows on the steps of the plaza, carrying a colossal debt and a sense of utter humiliation and disgrace back to their hometown. They had received the just consequences for their heartless actions. 2 months after finalizing the divorce in court, I decided to sell my old condo. That place held too many sad memories and bad energies. With the money from the sale, plus the $30,000 I'd recovered, I bought a larger, more luxurious condo in a new lakeside development. On moving day, I personally arranged a vibrant bouquet of lilies on the living room table. Standing on the sun-drenched, breezy balcony, gazing out at the vast lake, I smiled brightly. The life of a financially independent woman, one who dared to love and hate, dared to stand up and protect the fruits of her labor, was never a dead end. Having cleared away all the rubbish and negativity, before me now lay only a radiant sky and absolute freedom. The door to the future was wide open, welcoming the most complete, proudest version of myself. Dear viewers, as Emily's dramatic story concludes, I'm sure deep reflections linger in each of our hearts about marital fidelity and the principles of human conduct. Perhaps through this story, we realize that patience and sacrifice only truly hold value when given to the right people who appreciate them. Marriage is inherently a mutual effort, where sincerity, respect, and transparency must be paramount. Once a spouse becomes consumed by greed, exploiting familial ties to exploit and trample on their partner's efforts, then leniency only enables wickedness to triumph. The greatest lesson we can learn is the core value of self-reliance. A woman, regardless of her age or circumstances, needs to be financially independent and in control of her own life. Kindness must always be accompanied by shrewdness. Forgiveness must have its limits. Never allow the facade of family or false moralizing to become a knife that wounds yourself. Daring to let go of toxic relationships, daring to bravely stand up to defend what is right and one's self-respect, is the key to unlocking true peace. Life is inherently fair. Those who sow seeds of selfishness and deceit will sooner or later reap bitter consequences. People who live with integrity and self-respect will surely embrace the warm sunshine of freedom and happiness. Thank you sincerely, dear viewers, for taking the valuable time to listen to this story. I wish you and your families abundant health, peace, and complete happiness.